evening to you at home or in your vehicle, if you are on the road or at work or listening on the radio or on the internet in Dominica or abroad. Thank you for choosing Q95. This is the Global View on Q. A very, very warm welcome to all of our Q family listeners at home and globally. I'm Sheridan Gregoire, Mr. G. It's Tuesday, 6th January 2026, the first Tuesday of 2026, and it's just about 8:07 p.m. in the studios at Q95. We're sorry for the late start. We're live on all radio frequencies on QTV. Please follow us on Facebook and on YouTube at Q95 FM Radio. Share the live, like our pages, or on your phone numbers are on the homepage of our website at www.q95da.com. Get the latest breaking news and reviews on Q95 because you'll know it's true if you hear it on Q. We continue to revive the spirit of graciousness, love, peace, prosperity, and unity among our Kalinago and Afro-Caribbean brothers and sisters. It is our first Global View on Q show for 2026, and we continue to engage with our local, regional, and global Q family listeners and friends of Dominica at home and abroad. With me tonight is Justice Dr. Irving Andre, social scientist Simeon Joseph, Mr. Claudius Sanford, retired ASP Nicholas George, and the former Dominica UN Ambassador Crispin Gregoire. We will discuss national security and administrative accountability, crime and small arms proliferation, border security and police integrity, societal norms and tolerance which breed crime and undermine social stability and national security, the implications for Dominica and the Caribbean of the U.S. invasion of Venezuela, and the agreement of the government of Dominica to accept deportees from the United States. So here are some issues and questions that we hope to deal with tonight. Is there effective national security and accountability in Dominica? Is crime and small arms proliferation now rampant in Dominica, considering there were 24 homicides in 2025? Is there a problem with border security and police integrity in Dominica? Have societal norms and tolerance in Dominica been fostering crime and undermining social stability and national security? Do the government's policies reduce gun proliferation? Has the government of Dominica held anyone accountable for importing drugs? Has enforcement of gun legislation in Dominica been successful? And if not, then why? What is the way forward? Is the government willing to take the guns from their snipers and Navy SEALs? Is gun violence being used to intimidate persons opposed to the regime? However, as we begin, we will look at the implications of the U.S. invasion of Venezuela and the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife. What does governance of Venezuela look like going forward? Who is now in charge in Venezuela? And what are the implications for Dominica and the Caribbean? And we will certainly take the opportunity to comment on Dominica's government agreement to take in deportees sent from the United States. So we look forward to the contributions of Justice Dr. Irving Andre, social scientist Simeon Joseph, Mr. Claudius Sanford, Mr. Nicholas George, former Dominica UN Ambassador Crispin Gregoire, our listeners, callers, and viewers on the radio, Facebook, and on YouTube on national security, administrative accountability, crime and small arms proliferation, border security and police integrity, societal norms and tolerance, which breed crime and undermine social stability and national security, the implications for Dominica and the Caribbean of the U.S. invasion of Venezuela, and the agreement of the government of Dominica to accept deportees from the United States. So as usual, we invite you, our Q family and friends of Dominica, to help us give our usual huge shout out and big thank you to our farmers, our healthcare providers, our frontline workers, our police and fire officers, teachers, doctors, nurses, and public and private sector patriots and friends of Dominica at home and abroad. And as I always say, we welcome each and every Dominican and friend of Dominica to the Global View on Q. We embrace you wherever you are, in every nook and cranny, in every village, in every community at home, in Dominica, in the region, and globally. Thank you, Sherwin, for keeping us on the air. Thank you, Lambi, on the console directing the traffic. We will take your calls. As you know, the people's voice is always a priority on Q and on the Global View on Q. So call us anytime during the program. Lambi will signal us when you call. My co-host and guest panelists will expand and deliver on your own ideas. So I go now to Justice Dr. Irving Andre for his opening comments, first on the U.S. invasion of Venezuela and the implications for the Caribbean, including Dominica, and the agreement of the government of Dominica to accept deportees from the United States before we begin the topic. Dr. Andre, you're muted.
Let me thank you for inviting me to be here this evening, and let me um, express some welcome to the panelists. And we're waiting, obviously, to hear their wisdom on some of these issues that have been raised. It seems to me that we may not be able to complete any significant or detailed discussion about all these issues that you've raised, but certainly I would expect that everybody would try their best. These are precipitous times. Dominica probably has not faced this type of peril throughout in the past, even if you take into consideration May of 1979. The fact of the matter is that a number of initiatives by this government has imperiled Dominica, has placed Dominica in the crosshairs of a number of international countries that have significant questions and concerns about the legitimacy and the integrity of our passport program, about whether allowing persons to enter their respective countries with Dominican passports would imperil their security. And we have all done that for one central and fundamental reason. Those in authority are selling Dominica to save their souls and to save their savings wherever it is hidden or those savings are hidden. This is all this thing amounts to. The invasion of them by the Americans of Venezuela has provided further evidence as to the rot that unfortunately is consuming Dominica. Irrespective of what we think of America, the fact of the matter is there seems to be very strong evidence that Maduro was very much involved in drug trafficking and drug exportation, not only to America, but to Europe. But worse, the indictment filed in New York would seem to suggest that he had co-conspirators. He had co-conspiracies among the leadership in the Caribbean. Now, no names have been provided as far as I'm aware, and I'm certainly not going to mention any names, but we shall see. According to a pastor, prophecy shall fulfill. And if in fact that is the case, then we can understand the obsession with Maduro by these Caribbean leaders, why they love him so, why they turned a blind eye to when he threatened to invade Guyana, to steal Guyana's oil, and why they have maintained a conspiratorial silence in terms of Venezuela's machinations towards Guyana. And they have vociferously objected and protested about the US actions in Venezuela. So this is not just a matter of loss of a supply of oil. The US may have, and note the word may please, disbanded a conspiracy emanating from Venezuela, but with tentacles all over the Eastern Caribbean. We heard of bribes being paid to certain persons. They facilitated the transfer of drugs, whether to America, whether to Europe, but they were very much indeed, if the allegations are correct, involved in this type of activity. And that has significant resonance in Dominica itself. Because one thing we know, those of us who have been involved in law enforcement in any way, shape, or form, whether it's Nicholas George, whether it's Simeon Joseph, whether it's Pastor Rodney, or whoever it is, we know one thing. There's a trifecta in terms of criminality between drugs, guns, and gangs. And it may explain why it has been so difficult for our local law enforcement people to arrest significantly persons involved in the drug hierarchy as opposed to street peddlers. They find barrels of guns. Isn't that amazing? Periodically, they find barrels of guns coming from customs. But one thing stands out from a law enforcement perspective. Not one person is arrested as being the persons to whom these barrels are being shipped. Isn't that amazing from a crime enforcement perspective? This is not by coincidence. This is by design. And so we cannot lament the fact that crime, small arms violence, is on the increase. Because we know, based on the evidence, anecdotal and empirical, that gun violence or crimes perpetrated by gun-wielding persons are being enforced, not have been enforced, are being policed on a very selective basis. The evidence is clear. And that is part of the problem. And that is why Venezuela is important to Dominica. But not only that, Venezuela or Maduro has been the spiritual, or should I say the financial godfather of many of these Caribbean leaders, including our own leaders. What really happened to the Petro-Carib money or agreement? Who has disproportionately benefited from the free gas? As I mentioned that before, I'll say it again. Who has benefited from free trips to the U.S. Virgin Islands to shop? A selective few. Can Dominicans as a whole glory or praise or be happy in the fact that gas prices have been reduced on account of this Petro-Carib deal? It is meant and it has been designed to benefit a few. And unfortunately, crime pays, contrary to what we've been taught from childhood. We've seen it here. It pays. We've been told by persons who've been in the very belly of the passport selling schemes that the majority of the monies is being hidden in mysterious accounts, whether in Dubai, whether in Switzerland, elsewhere. We've seen evidence of this. A certain select few buying houses as if money is not a problem. And the persons who have to do basic labor to make a living have to be content with wages which cannot give them a modicum of life that you can describe as comfortable. Venezuela is important because what the Americans has done is to cut that umbilical cord between that country and many of our local island leaders, those who rent property to the Venezuelans, those who benefit from Petro-Carib, those who send their soldiers and their law enforcement officers for trading. There's another lesson that we should learn from what happened as a result of this invasion. If the reports are true, it is members of the security hierarchy who paved the way, as if to give them a red carpet, the Americans, to come in and to snatch Maduro. Maduro, like so many other island leaders, was couched in a little cocoon, which basically made him believe that he was untouchable. He lived in some impregnable castle. I'm not sure he was paying $64,000 a month, but he had security guards galore. My understanding is he even had a couple in the latrine. But that was not enough to protect him from the tentacles of the Americans. I'm not here to defend America. I just know the scourge that is eating away at the body of Dominica's democracy. Many of these fellas, many of your panelists can't get a job here. Well, Mr. Sanford is working as a professor at the State College, but he's held that position for some time. But Nicholas George, senior member, retired, yes. Mr. Simeon Joseph. Yes, I haven't seen Pastor Rodney, but he has his own church. You know, he doesn't have to depend. Lambie, he had a job affiliated with the airport. It was snatched away from him like by a thief in the night. And they still can't give a justification why that happened. And that wealth, these funds, these under-the-table funds have helped to create a super rich minority in Dominica that has corralled and harnessed and kidnapped all the accountability sections of government in Dominica. What about the integrity of public office? They gave some awards recently, Mr. G. I can't remember who they gave those awards, though. They gave some awards. Every European, American, Canadian, and English, all these countries are concerned about what's happening in Dominica. That the proceeds of sale of these parts are going into individual coffers, not under the proverbial coconut fiber mattress, but hidden in accounts. The Europeans last year said, well, look, as far as we are concerned, the golden standard is that the net proceeds of sale of these passports must be deposited into the consolidated fund. I think our Prime Minister talked about changes he made in October of this year. But as I said before, in terms of the proceeds of sale going into the consolidated fund, that to them is a bridge too far. But that is the ultimate standard of accountability and decency and integrity in public office. So there's no secret as to what's happening in Dominica. But the time has come to pay the piper. We can no longer hide. You heard what the president said. I have great respect for Mr. Sanford and his wife, I should say. But in my view, and I say it openly and boldly, it's a crying shame when in 2025, a Dominican president of Kalinago origin, who one would have expected would be well aware of the history of oppression faced by the Kalinago people, the history and pattern of second-class citizenry in Dominica, would be essentially saying to the Chinese, it's fine if you bring 3,000 of your people here. We're okay with that, Gasson. And most recently, you have your own prime minister saying to the Americans, we will take those persons you don't want. And let me say one thing, let's be honest here, those people who are going to be sent to Dominica are almost or disproportionately racialized people. Dominica has invited itself to participate in a kind of racial cleansing in America. They did that with the Palestinians. And why? You remember, there were pronouncements about if you give us some money to take care of these people, we'll take some. So again, the justification for these types of actions is not altruistic. It's not to help those people. It's to line our pockets. But worse, look at the timing of this recent pronouncement by our leader. He is trying to reduce the heat from the stove of the Americans. He is trying to deflect attention. And I'll tell you something, Dominicans should know. I go on the record to say this must have been a huge surprise when Americans suspended the issuance of visas to Dominicans. I'll tell you why. You see, because one of our so-called ambassadors, one who was involved in the sale of passports, one who'd received a significant commission, has been for some time ingratiating himself to the Trump administration. So there must have been a huge surprise because they thought they were insulated from Trump's action. Again, the phenomenon of the autocratic leader believing that he's untouchable. So when that edict came down, it caught them by surprise. And it provides some confirmation, particularly with the indictment, that it's not only Maduro who is under the gun, it's some of our own leaders. Many of those who excoriated the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. It shows that they were all in this thing together, as many commentators have been saying over and over again. And that has been hidden under the mask of Caribbean solidarity. We live in a zone of peace. Isn't that what we've been told? We live in a zone of peace. Anybody who is aware of the history of not just Dominica, but the West Indies, would know that we live in anything but a zone of peace. Probably Mr. Sanford would make a mention of the so-called 1932 Carib War, when persons were killed. Why? Because they said they were smuggling, for God's sakes. What would be the penalty for what's happening today as we speak? So this is no time to rejoice. On the contrary, we are at our worst, in my respectful view, worst condition post-independence in 1978. Dominica has been tarnished irretrievably, one would argue. Our citizens, their movement has been significantly curtailed. They reside or they live on small amount of income, to be quite, compared to the rest of the Eastern Caribbean. They are denied a basic increases in their wages, in their pensions, in their gratuities. If there is a hint that their mother, father, son, sister, or beau-père supports the opposition, they're screwed. Dominica cannot take any more. And those who talk about, oh, it's time for the Prime Minister to resign. Folks, I hate to say it, but dream on. They have benefited too much. The wealth has been easy, the wealth they've generated. And you have the law enforcement hierarchy propping up this system of iniquity and corruption. That is the problem. Every institution of governance has been contaminated. Nothing has been spared. And that is where we are. It is a measure of the tolerance of Dominicans. They must be good Catholic that they've endured so much without saying enough is enough. They must have been nurtured on the biblical admonition that you turn your cheek if you are slapped, if you are ripped off, if you're denied what is due to you, if you're denied promotion, if you're denied a job, if you're denied a decent pension, turn the other cheek and sit 100 novenas. Dominica has never faced this type of challenge that it now faces. And unfortunately, it cannot be hidden anywhere. The whole world knows what's happening. By these actions, by what's happening in Venezuela, by pronouncements we've been making about persons in Dominica. We're not even talking about Desbranches. Desbranches is like an opened wound, festering and getting worse in the body politic of Dominica.
Yeah, Irvin, let me just stop you here because, you know, you ought to come back again and deal with the body of the topic here tonight. I know that you have a lot to contribute to that, but I want to go to Simeon now to give us his comments, open comments on the U.S. invasion of Venezuela and the whole business of Dominica agreeing to accept deportees from the United States. Simeon, your thoughts? You're muted.
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute.
Yes, you're unmuted now. You're good.
Okay, I'm unmuted now. Good night, Mr. Gregor. Somewhere the other, my mic was not unmuting for some strange reason. But good night to you and your listeners. I think, like Dr. Andrew, I share the observation that perhaps we may not be able to cover all those topics that are before us tonight. But I think it's significant that we look at and explore the current, what do you call it now, Caribbean geopolitical reality that is faced upon us. And that can be looked at from several angles. I mean, that alone is a topic in itself. And it has, I think, serious implications for how the Caribbean is viewed, how we view ourselves as a people. And apart from that, the stance, one can say, that needs to be taken in light of this. We all know, and you know, we all know that when we really look at the reality of the situation, what is happening today, there's a lot of disingenuity in the whole scenario from all sides. We know the intent of the United States of America on face value is not what they're saying that it is. We look at the reaction from the leaders of CARICOM, and it raises many questions. We see now a sort of dynamic shift from former leaders of the Caribbean who were almost penned to Venezuela, i.e. Dominica and St. Vincent, etc., who now seemingly have totally distanced themselves from Venezuela altogether. These prime ministers and governments, PetroCarib, remember in 2008 to 2014, everything was PetroCarib, you know, PetroCarib School, PetroCarib House, PetroCasa, PetroCarib Road, and all those kind of things there. For God's sake, the Prime Minister of Dominica was a pallbearer at the funeral of Hugo Chavez. There is no doubt, it's not unknown to us, that there was a strong alliance between Dominica, St. Vincent, and those countries with Venezuela. And now it's as if they have just abandoned altogether this alliance between Venezuela and Dominica. And it brings to light the fact that we have been saying a long time that this unholy alliance between Dominica and Venezuela and the Caribbean countries and Venezuela would lead to a situation whereby we're all implicated. I mean, when we go back, Venezuela was the first country that Dominica established diplomatic relations with in 1978 after independence, right? We know that Carlos Andres Perez paid a visit to Dominica way back then. And we enjoyed many cultural and educational exchanges, even military, with Venezuela in the late 1970s and even early 1980s. So Carlos Andres Perez, we know, was a very close friend of Patrick John Oliver Serafin and even Eugenia Charles. So one is not saying that engagement with Venezuela is an unholy thing. What has come to the fore is that since the advent of Hugo Chavez and the relationship between Dominica and Venezuela over the past few years, it has been an unholy alliance, you know? And so now we see people were telling us all the time, all the things that were happening, the suspicions were there. Now they have totally abandoned the boy and the gentleman. And then I'm hearing today the Prime Minister is saying that they are seeking to foster closer ties with the United States. To what extent? No, there's no doubt. I mean, and that should be a warning, you know. I think, honest to God, I think these people's backs are against the walls now. Okay. And I think I would suspect that there's a tremendous amount of back dealing and under table dealing and behind the curtains arrangements going on right now for some people to save the epidermis of their skin, if you want to go down to the muscles, you know, because they realize what's coming. And it's very suspicious. The fact that the Prime Minister could tell the media yesterday that he cannot disclose the agreement between he and Venice and the United States, I think that is one thing. That's one thing. And so let us look at it from me, just in terms of that, from three perspectives after having said so. One, the fact that dictators fall. Their day will come. That's the first thing. Okay? And while the United States may have certain level of justification for perhaps trying to, as they say, quote unquote, usher in democracy. We know that's not true. We know that's not true. And so there's no, I think the legal aspects will play out in the long run, because I heard a word called the Monroe Doctrine by Trump when he was speaking. Now that's a very frightening thing. If you look at the history of the Monroe Doctrine, particularly when it was established by President Monroe and when it began to bear fruit in the early 20th century in Latin America, and the fight between the European powers, the United States of America, and the leaderships of Latin America, South America, and some parts of the Caribbean. That's a very frightening thing, and that should send an alert. The second thing I want to say in all of this is that I think from a theological perspective, it is very inhumane what is going to happen between the so-called people in the, because I will say this as a preamble, people are not chattel. Slavery is over. People are not commodities and products to be shuffled around by superpowers and governments at their whims and fancies. Because I would suspect that Dominica has signed on to the International Declaration of Human Rights. And I know that the Declaration of Human Rights, I don't think condones the proposal that is before us on the table today. Because if my memory serves me right, when the Universal Declaration Rights was proclaimed, it says that people have to be protected from arbitrary arrest, detention, or exile. And so when you have to take people and transplant them to another country, that is a form of exiling them. It's like slavery all over again. And the fact that the question we have to ask, and I think Dr. Andrew alluded to it, will these people be given a fair trial? Okay? And there's the other implications that go with ensuring that these people's rights are met, in the sense that what kind of economic, social, and cultural rights will they be entitled to? Will they be able to enjoy the right to work, the right to equal pay, and the right to an adequate standard of living when they are so-called deported to Dominica? We know that the United Nations has been working for years on genocide as a violation of human rights, right? And one of the major things that the United Nations has been fighting against is causing mental harm to people as a subtle form of genocide, of forcibly transferring people from one place to the other, uprooting them and supplanting them. So the question I have to ask is, Dominica still a signatory to the United Nations and its Declaration of Human Rights? In recent times, the United States has been fighting slavery the world over. And one of the things the United Nations has addressed regarding slavery, it has said in many of its documents, is that it is a state of servitude when you have a certain level of exploitation, where you have the callous negation of human rights and dignity, and there is a very high level of discrimination against certain people, which is what we see happening. Again, allow me to quote from the United Nations again, and where it says that people, as means of universal declaration, should be given the opportunity to have legal rights, and that their legal rights must never be violated. So the question I have to ask is, on what basis will these people be coming to Dominica? And of course, as I said, the whole geopolitical exchange scenario between the United States and Venezuela, that's a whole topic for discussion, because we have all the branches. You know, we've heard of the threats to Cuba, we've heard of the threats to Colombia, you know what I mean? And there's all the legal questions of was it right within the United States or even constitutionally by the United States? And to what extent should Caribbean governments be drawn into that? Significantly, we have found that when CARICOM's mouth is as large as the Essequibo River on matters within the OECS and CARICOM, they are mute. Mia Mottley, the person who is supposed to be the grandstanding, flamboyant, outspoken international public spokesperson on international matters, you would swear right now that she's mumu. And she can say nothing. CARICOM governments who have banded together to send their troops into, I don't know why they didn't send their troops to Venezuela to fight for Maduro. You know, and so these are questions, these are larger, wider questions. But to me, Mr. Gregoire, some significant considerations must be borne in mind. Let me just close that off a little, in the sense that I think, based on what I'm hearing, and based on a lot of the disclosures that have come out of that, I think there has to be a significant investigation or inquiry into the source of funds into PetroCarib that Dominica benefited from. And I'm just putting that there tonight. There has to be a significant investigation and inquiry, and I'll repeat, into the source of funds that were channeled into PetroCarib over the years to determine the legitimacy of this source of funds, based on all what we are hearing now. And I'm putting that out there. And I'm also saying that I find it highly suspect that if you decipher and you dissect, both dissect to decipher the utterances. I wouldn't say they are statements. I think they were utterances, because there's a difference between an utterance and a statement, you know, that is loaded with facts and an eclectic form of reasoning, is the fact that what is very troubling in the midst of all of this is, I heard in the Prime Minister's statement that he said, I, as Prime Minister and head of government. So that seemed to have been a unilateral decision by the Prime Minister in agreement. So my question is, has he been cornered? Is there some private negotiation or scenario that has been? Because I think when you see the dynamics of Donald Trump has been able from 2016 to now to corner every major leading Republican politician on his side, Lindsey Graham and all these people who were bitterly opposing him, to turn them into his lapdogs. He's very good at doing that. So I'm wondering whether the same tactic, as we say, has not been used on our leader in Dominica to get him to segue, to acquiesce to the position that we are in now. Maybe he has something, I'm going to put that out there. Maybe there's something out there that people are scared of. And so they just took that unilateral decision to say, okay, I'm going to agree.
Now, that's
just into general instruction.
Before you leave them,
yeah.
What struck me is that we've been hearing a lot from the Prime Minister on all this matter. We have not heard anything at all from the Minister of Foreign Affairs. I wonder why.
Well, that is my thing, the whole dynamic. Because what I'm saying is, Mr. Gregoire, is you listen to the deliberations of the United Nations yesterday. You listen to the deliberations in the European Union, and you even listen to for what Denmark has put out today in terms of the cessation of the collaboration of the United States in fighting drugs in the Caribbean. So when you look at the wider body of discussion that is taking place, there's a lot to be suspect. A lot to be suspect. And if one also looks at the trail of engagement between the Caribbean leaders, the head of government in Dominica, and the utterances that have been said all along versus what is being said now. I mean, this is like a 180-degree turn. And so the question is, in terms of our foreign relations with the United States, with CARICOM, and with Venezuela, what is the new trajectory? So that raises your question. What is the current foreign philosophy or position of Dominica vis-a-vis the United States and Venezuela. And as I said today, the statement of the Prime Minister was very loaded. I'm very disappointed in the media of Dominica because he made about 10 statements which could have been challenged, and he was not challenged about it. And I will end by saying the Prime Minister spoke to you about greater collaboration with the United States moving forward. For God's sake, you have been Prime Minister of this country for 23 years. You have totally ignored, bypassed, not included the United States in any of the macro or micro developmental plans of Dominica, not in education, not in health, not in infrastructure, not in agriculture, not in productivity, nothing. You have not been an ally of the United States, and the records are there to show that. You have not even built the marina in Portsmouth, when the U.S. ambassador was given the bottle of rum, Bombardier, to accommodate some building. Not even that we have seen to fruition, right? We have students in the United States of America that government has sent on scholarships, and they are not paying the scholarships for the students. Not even that the government of Dominica should negotiate, say, well, okay, allow the students to think. Now we have a situation where Dominicans are literally being banned to enter the United States of America. And you're telling me that your first statement is coming as a result of the banning of Dominicans from receiving, you have negotiated. So all of that is as a result of that. Now, my question is, what caused us to be banned? Is the passport and the CBI issue. It's not any other thing. It's not Venezuela. It's not any other thing. It's not the detainees. It's not the refugees. So why is it that we have to trade off having deportees so that you can alleviate the visa situation of Dominicans? To me, that is a hell of a smoke screen, and something very cognitively dissonant that any person with a minute level of understanding, comprehension, or literacy can decipher. And I'll end there.
Yes, true. And of course,
sorry to take up so much.
As I go to, no, that's all right. You're good. As I go to Claudia Sanford, just to remind ourselves, Simeon, that well, we lost the only kind of American investment that we had. It was Ross University, and so that tells us something. Claudius, how are you doing?
Yeah, good night, Mr. G. Good night to your esteemed panelists. I'm doing well. Sorry about the lateness. I had to close up another meeting, but I'm here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes.
I think Simeon and Dr. Andre has done a phenomenal job in bringing the reality to the fore here for us in Dominica with the current geopolitical dispensation that we face ourselves in. I don't think I can say much more. I agree totally to what they have said, but I think upon reflection, we have seen ourselves in a position now where Dominicans have to reflect upon what is best for our country. Because what we have seen unfold is that even our friends prior to today or yesterday's press conference, they no longer will trust us. That flip from Alba, camaraderie and, Hugo Chavez and the Chavista and, equity for all and social justice for all, to now, in the arms or in the legs of the United States as some, developing fetus is really not going to build our trust among the people we once stood by. So that is a lesson there to be learned. The other thing too is that we have seen over the years, the post-independent period, that the ideological stance of some of our leadership has not been thoroughly thought of. So, you see there was once for whatever reason they had an anti-capitalist imperialist stance, So the alignment with China and then Venezuela, Cuba, meaning that in the eyes of the public, the people that don't know all the information or who is pretty much naive or don't understand the game at play, that the capitalist imperialists are the bad ones, and then the socialist imperialists, the Chinese and the Hugo Chavez's and the Maduros are the better ones for society. And they were able to feed that into the minds of the people to attain power and to exercise their greed and their recklessness. But then when come to actually stand up to those true ideological stands, they crumble and fall before the might of, the capitalist imperialists. Like Simeon said, I am no fan of the US, neither am no fan of the socialist imperialists. I'm neither. I'm a patriot. I put Dominica first. And even before Dominica, I put my indigenous identity, before the national identity, because my struggle and an understanding of the struggle of my ancestors, is like we have been faced with that over and over. So we have had to face the colonialists in that endeavor, in a different context, maybe with a different set of weapons and strategies. Then we had to face the liberated African slaves when they took over the plantation and they took over the political and economic system. We had to struggle with that as well for our survival here in Dominica, being played like a pawn in the chess game of economic and political, survival. And here we again going through the same system at a much more sophisticated level. So I stand as a pro-Dominican. I see over the past couple of weeks, the Dominican population has been thrown into a situation where you are either pro-America or pro-Venezuela, and the conversation of pro-Dominican hasn't really surfaced. And the lesson there to learn for leadership going forward, and even current leadership, is that sometimes our ideological position supersedes our national interests. And right now we see our leaders are cowering to the wheels and fancies of international players and not necessarily to the best interests of our people. And as has been highlighted earlier by Simeon and Dr. Andres, that even with that refugee deal, you can clearly see in the utterances of the Prime Minister that there was no consultancy or no discussion, not even with his parliament, not even, one can say, not even with his cabinet, far less to hear the opinions and notions of the people who are most important. So the people are totally out of those decision-making process, and that's a dangerous thing for a growing democracy. And I believe now the people have to show their hands and their might and their power in reclaiming, whatever sovereignty we have, because clearly our sovereignty has been on sale, and it is depicting itself in very, unhumanistic ways, with the transfer of human lives as commodities, as Simeon rightly said, and the displacement of human beings for a few, maybe dollars, or for the reputation or the salvation of reputation of reckless leaders. And these are the things I think I take from what we see is unfolding. I believe there's a lot of hidden truths. People are playing, games in areas they're not supposed to, and at the end of it is always the people that pay. I mean, I had to go get my visa this month, and I cannot. I've had free visas in the past, going through the US, studied in the US at ease, and I can't do that right now. As of the 26th, even more measures of bonding the visa will come. So if they do give you a visa, I think you are paying some $15,000. You have to pay that and be bonded by that. So if you don't come back within the time period they give you, you lose that money. If you make the payment before the time they give you, you lose that money. So we are the ones who are going to bear, all the burdens of those reckless, um, fanatical decisions that our leaders make. Not being wise and not being reasonable and calculated, but more going on the act of showmanship. I remember Edison James in my early days of joining the United Workers' Party would always use that phrase of showmanship. There's people call themselves world boss and so on to the poor ears of the unknowing Dominican, and then when they find themselves on that stage, you see how small they shrink. So there's a lot of lessons to be learned, and my focus in this dispensation is to reach out to the people. The power still lies within us, and we have an opportunity now to put things in order, to elect leaders that are wise, that put our country first and put the needs and the livelihoods of our people first, and not just a select few who will benefit from the largest of the CBI program, no matter whether they have to sell it for criminals, crooks, and vagabonds out there in the international world. Put their largest in oil deals that we do not know much about, like Simeon rightly said, the Petrocarib deal. I was surprised to hear the Prime Minister say that, even at the press conference yesterday, that Petrocarib is an organization that buys oil from the market. And I'm saying, but that is not what we were told when Petrocarib came here. We were told that the oil is coming out from Venezuela, it's going to be cheaper, it's going to be this. And then you see all this maneuvering, as things unfolded. And it brought me back to a memory of the coffee factory. I'm pretty sure Mr. George and Mr. Joseph and the others would remember that hoopla about the coffee factory in Portsmouth coming from the Venezuelans, and all these huge military planes bringing all this coffee, and armies line up the streets, parading this coffee to Casibrus overnight in that reunion center, military people all around the place, M16 guns guarding that coffee, and then it just burnt into thin air without any true result from that coffee factory. And now that this narcotic trade and everything, it brings back that memory that there was something fishy about that coffee that also needs investigation. Mr. Joseph, I would also add that this is an incident that happened in Dominica that has to be investigated, because it was a testing ground, I believe, for all the current breakthroughs we're hearing. So we as Dominicans need to really get back, to the basic principles of accountability to our people, the basic principles of honesty and truth, and like always, I believe, the purest of ideologies, or the purest of concepts and values, are those rooted in the tradition of our people. The closer you go to the beginning, the purer people's hearts and minds get, and the purer their work, will produce outcomes for any community or any country. So I think we as a people need to go back to the basic principles of truth, the basic principles of integrity and honesty in the affairs of our country, and stop being persuaded by the showmanship of people and the things they do, because most of the time it's reckless, and we are the ones who bear the burden. I'll stop here for now, and I thank you again for the opportunity.
Yes, thanks a lot, Claudius, for your opening remarks. I'm sure you'll come back and let's deal when we're dealing with the main topic that we're here to deal with tonight. But as I go to Nicholas George, I just want to recognize and welcome and say shout out to all the folks who have joined us on Facebook and on YouTube here tonight. Welcome, guys. Thanks for joining us. Nicholas George, your thoughts on this the U.S. invasion of Venezuela and the notion of Dominica agreeing to take deportees from the U.S. You want to unmute your mic. Your mic is muted. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Gregoire, and my greetings, New Year's greetings, and all to the esteemed panelists and my friend Mr. Lambert, as well as Sherwin in the background. I've listened to quite a bit there, and I think I should probably just continue listening. I would characterize all what has gone on in one little thing. It says it's all about money. Money gained illicitly. That's what it's all about. And in a piece written by Mr. Claudius Stanford, he called Distributive Competence in Political Party Management. He says, distributive competence refers to a political party's capacity to strategically allocate tangible resources such as government funds, pork belly projects, patronage jobs, subsidies, or targeted transfers to specific groups, regions, or individuals in exchange for political support. That's what it's about. Right there. That's what it's about. That Dominica hosts a National Security Council. The National Security Council is chaired by the Prime Minister, and a number of ministers sit with him. There is an intelligence committee chaired by the Chief of Police, and that is people with senior officials from the Attorney General's office, Ministry of Finance, Foreign Affairs, Education, the air and seaports. And these officials are to bring to bear the intelligence that resides within their ministries, analyze it, and take it to the National Security Council for further analysis and decision. The intelligence clearinghouse for both bodies is the National Joint Intelligence Center, the NJIC. So there's a structure. So we go to the money, and there was once I did bring out to some officials that in an assessment of the criminal economy in Dominica, burglary, in terms of interference by law enforcement, what we recovered from criminals accounted for probably 10%, $1 million, essentially 10% of what was stolen. Drug trafficking, $10 million, and that's about 10%. So we're talking here about $100 million, $120 million over a 1-year period. It's about $300 million. And then you contrast that with the Prime Minister's budget, or in 1 year, the Minister of Finance, $486 million, 200 expenditure and 280 revenue. The difference between the Prime Minister or the Minister of Finance's money and the drug traffickers is that the state's budget are projections. That they project they will get so much money from the customs, from Inland Revenue, and the other departments that are revenue drawing for entities. The drug dealers are cash. All right? So you have drug dealers in Dominica with returns of up to $300 million. And what are they likely to do with that? Just ask yourself the question. Now, we have a Ministry of Finance. There is the formal economy. I just spoke to how you collect some of the funds. And there's the informal economy, within which there is an underground economy. And I am certain that the officials in the Ministry of Finance would have seen and can see that there is an influx of funds that they cannot account for. And therefore, they can ask a question about it. Where is that money coming from? Who is generating that money? And is it legal or illegal? And then you can draw policy decisions on that, and you can enact laws to deal with that. If that is not being done, then you have now, with the what I call the corrupt political system that we are governed under, that allows for division, it allows for enmity, it allows for hatred, it allows for everything. And with that kind of money funding the division, the hatred, the enmity, it now goes down to the lower echelon of the community, and it manifests itself in criminal activity. Where's the nexus between Dominica and Venezuela? It is in the political system as well. Maduro was accused of stealing the last election. And then we clothe that theft under non-interference in the national affairs of states. That's where we clothed it. Dominica, we have accused our government of repeatedly stealing elections. And then our brother and sister countries would say, we're not interfering in the affairs of our sister island. Now, when Maduro is arrested, we now call on sovereignty, but we didn't say anything to him when he stole the election. Similarly, the Caribbean leaders did not say anything to our leaders here when they stole election. However, when the opposition was advocating for electoral reform, these very leaders dispatched RSS troops to suppress us. And I heard my good friend, Mr. Simeon Joseph, asking, why wasn't the RSS dispatched to Venezuela? Well, we would have to use Mr. Sanford, because he's from the tribe that would know how to get to the Orinoco River or the Essequibo. Okay, he couldn't go straight to Venezuela, so we'd have to get some area to bring his troops and amass it and then cross the border into Venezuela. So it's a good thing that we have him on here. And then, so I want to, you raise a point that you've asked, you have not heard from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And I want to just probably say something. Is it possible that the matters of foreign affairs are seemingly foreign to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs? I want to end here because I think a lot more has to be said.
Yeah, thank you, Nicholas. That was a good question to end with. Let me just, before I go to Dr. Andre to start dealing with the main body of the subject here tonight, I want to go over to Lambi to give our listeners the telephone numbers that they can call to join in on the conversation if they wish to. Lambi, could you give the numbers out?
Oh, yes. The numbers are as follow: 449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097, 616-4257. Those are all local numbers. The international or overseas number is 305-432-9624. Let me run those numbers one more time. 449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097, 616-4257, and 305-432-9624. Back to you, Mr. G.
All right. So, Dr. Andre, as we come into this topic here tonight, let me just repeat some of the questions that I put there. Maybe you might address your mind to one or two of them or some of them, if possible. Here's some of the questions I put on the table. Is there effective national security and accountability in Dominica? Is crime and small arms proliferation now rampant in Dominica, considering there were 24 homicides in 2025? Is there a problem with border security and police integrity in Dominica? Have social norms and tolerance in Dominica been fostering crime and undermining social stability and national security? Do the government's policies reduce gun proliferation? Has the government of Dominica held anyone accountable for importing drugs? Has enforcement of gun legislation in Dominica been successful, and if not, why? What is the way forward? Is the government willing to take the guns from their snipers and Navy SEALs? is gun violence being used to intimidate persons opposed to the regime? So, Dr. Andre, maybe you might want to try to address some of those questions in your
Well, these are quite a few questions, but I think they all relate to one fundamental problem. There is a malaise in Dominica. There is an immorality from top to bottom. And the immorality can be measured by the fact that many pastors and sadly some priests, once they are seated, not so much priests, but more pastors, in the air-conditioned cocoon of the duty-free SUV, they become oblivious of all the suffering in Dominica. Because for them, it is what they can get from the political directorate. And that is the problem. The religious or biblical teachings, quite frankly, have been cast by the wayside to a significant degree. There are many people who still adhere to the teachings that we grew up on. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Do unto others what you'd have them do unto you, and so on. All these teachings are being regarded as things of the past to be disposed of, to be cast aside, like yesterday's newspaper. The whole business of living instead of living with each other, as opposed to on top of each other. The latter is the governing principle in Dominica as we speak. If that was not the case, and if you are in possession of tremendous wealth generated by one of Dominica's most cherished assets, its passports, you would make it your business to ensure that every businessman, every trucker, every carpenter, every worker at the public works department, every teacher, every nurse, every doctor are given an opportunity to thrive, are given an opportunity to earn decent wages that would ensure that they can provide for themselves and their elderly relatives and their children. They can pay off their mortgage. They can feel proud, as opposed to going by this, I don't know if they still have it, every Wednesday, the Red Clinic, for God's sakes. They can feel proud that they've achieved this by the sweat of their brow, not by beggary. You do not build a nation by making people believe that they do not have to work hard. You do not build a nation by making people believe that because they can sell their souls to the political directorate, they will get monies that should have been deposited into the consolidated fund. You do not believe a nation built on a fabric and foundation of deception, deceit, and discrimination against people who are simply exercising their democratic right to free speech, free association, freedom of assembly. You do not build a nation if you do not build and nurture the inherent integrity of every individual person. They may have disparate skills, but as a leader, as a servant leader, you make it your business to ensure that all should be given and afforded an opportunity to become something in his or her own country. The proliferation of guns, it goes hand in hand with the integrity of law enforcement in Dominica. Our border cannot be more porous than it is today. One of my esteemed panelists made reference to the fact, didn't the US give the Dominican government $2 or $3 million to build a facility at Capuchin to help in the interdiction of drug importers or drug traffickers? What happened to the money? Didn't the Venezuelans give the prime minister money for the Kalinago people? What happened to the money? Huh? What about the police force? It is racked by division, apparently, based on information from persons who have better knowledge than I. Persons who are known as doing their job with respect and dignity are cast by the wayside. Advance, advance. What you are seeing is inequity being advanced on the people of Dominica. What do you expect? Drive-by shootings, for God's sakes, in Dominica? 2 persons killed by being dumped from a bridge in Vegas. A priest has to serve as the conscience of the nation by saying, nobody sees, nobody hears. In a country with less than 75,000 people. In a country where everybody knows everybody's secret. Except, of course, law enforcement. That selective enforcement is eating away at the fabric of Dominica, quite frankly. And in a sense, it is aiding and abetting criminality in Dominica. Because it sends a message that if you parade yourself with a red t-shirt or a dress, then you are in fact proclaiming to law enforcement, you can't take my bench. You have to bring it back. Because we are the untouchables. How can you have a society based on law and order with that type of philosophy, with that type of dog-eat-dog mentality? It's what I can get away with. And I just have to sell my soul and I can get away with many things, whether it's passing bad checks, whether it's helping yourselves or expropriating property that do not belong to you. How can you prosper in that kind of context? There's no secret as to why we're in this predicament, for God's sakes. We have abandoned all the teachings of the past and we've embraced immorality of greed, selfishness, and exploitation. So there's no secret as to why we're in this predicament. Again, the whole question of accountability. We've talked about unequal enforcement of the laws. I'm not even going to go there. We've talked about persons who you expect would be held to be the upholders of the law, become the conspirators who are undermining the law, whether it's by way of false or bogus elections, whether it's by way of false interpretation of legislation. It only happens here.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Andrew Lambie. You want to take a call?
Yes. Caller, please go ahead.
You lost the call.
Yes, the caller is there. Go ahead, please.
Hello, good evening,
Good evening.
and happy New Year to you all. What I am saying, we can't afford to even get rid of our garbage. How are we going to maintain these people? We that are poor are getting poorer, and there's nothing for us. So why we cannot accept these people? Because we don't have nothing for ourselves. We can't maintain ourselves. We can't even get rid of our garbage and the other things. How are we going to maintain these people? I've been calling for the whole day about 1 million times. I can't get on. I can only get on now. What I am saying it is very disheartening what is happening. Thank you very much and have
Yes,
a pleasant night.
Yes, and thanks a lot for calling, Dr. Andrew. Your thoughts on that caller's remarks?
Well, the caller is correct. And who feels it knows it. Was it Jimmy Cliff who said that? Or whoever, I don't know. Who feels it knows it? And that's precisely the point. But it just shows you the extent to which we have failed as a society. The whole garbage question, for God's sakes. I was in Dominica not too long ago, and I went to one particular village known as the flower mecca of Dominica. And in that little village, there were 10 heaps of garbage, for God's sakes. 10 heaps of garbage. And multiply that by multiples of 10 if you take a stroll or drive throughout Dominica. That in itself is an indictment of the governance that we have. If you're not concerned about this basic issue, the health of your people, the whole question of leptospirosis or whatever the name is. Stop.
Take a call, Lambie.
Caller, please go ahead.
Yeah, blessings to you all, gentlemen.
And to you too.
It is leptospirosis.
Oh,
It is
okay.
worse than leptospirosis.
Okay.
Gentlemen, just to make a quick intervention, I want to commend you all for the consistency, persisting that evil is evil and not trying to put a spin on a spade, so to speak. The level of naivety I saw many years ago, even people who that a bit sympathetic to the plight of the people against these evildoers, thought I was a bit extreme. They could not have seen what I was saying. And if you have a relationship with a friend, and you're being ungrateful, you're being, just another ungrateful one, and you get a new friend. But the new friend is the enemy of the old friend. And the old friend can just watch you in pure disappointment or disgust. But on a geopolitical scale, you have to be very careful. I see how foolish and ignorant, greedy, dictatorial, ruthless, and disrespectful that boy was all along. To think he could go jump in Alba and talk tough against America and think it would not be painful. Where diplomacy is concerned, you have to be more cautious. You have to be diplomatic. So the consequences or the ramification, the far-reaching consequences, the boy was too blind. He was busy accumulating, disrespecting, victimizing, brutalizing, framing people up, a Kubite truck and a sound system, and so many other things. He could not have seen the pitfalls others got caught in or others may have avoided. And now, like Tabebi, that whole dirtiness he was involved in gets stuck to him, trying to extricate himself. He's going to blame everybody else as usual, workers that do that. So really and truly, I am seeing the churches and the people who knows better exclude yourselves, everybody there. They stand aside and look, and looking at this boy, they knew because they were receiving some crumbs, they knew the boy was going to take the whole country over the edge, deep into a precipice. They stayed and said nothing, particularly the churches. And now they're still not talking. They're too ashamed and fearful of a lunatic who they have allowed to run amok with the affairs of state. Thanks for the time.
And thanks a lot for that submission as well. Simeon, let me just go to you to see if you can address some of these questions, some of these issues that I had put on the table that I read out a moment ago. But before you do that, let me just take a call from Lambi.
Good evening, caller. Thank you for joining us. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Lambert. Good evening, Mr. G and the panel.
Hi, how are you?
Gentlemen, there are so many issues. These issues are going at 100 cycles per second, and we cannot even keep up. Roosevelt Skerrit has presented us with so many issues. We're not able to even focus in on one of them and try to analyze it. I remember, to take off from where Blessings was talking, people used to glorify Roosevelt Skerrit about how his diplomatic, his diplomatic style, for lack of a better word that comes to me. And he was glorified for all the money that he was getting from Mr. Chavez. And now look where it's gotten us. Then we went to the CBI program and started selling our passports like fish. Now see where it has gotten us. And I believe that the kind of situation that America is forcing us into, to take these refugees, it's a form of punishment. It's a way to punish us, to tell us, this is what we were suffering with. Now you can suffer with it. But while I'm there, I want to ask a question. when you send these when we accept these refugees or whatever title they want to come under, is it a permanent affair? Is it forever? If it's not forever, do they become citizens? And when they have children, do these children also become citizens? And then there's so many other questions. Are we being paid? Will we be given a certain amount of money so that we can maintain these people initially till they can get on their own? There are so many questions. And what got me today was that a little brief note from the Prime Minister of Antigua was so much more revealing about the whole system than what Roosevelt Skerrit fed us. He fed us nothing. And just hearing from the Antigua Prime Minister was a whole wider scale of understanding of the system. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yes, and thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for that contribution. You want to say something quickly, Claudius?
Yeah, first of all, the caller raised a point there, which is kind of very, very interesting, Mr. G. If you think about it, right, the Citizens by Investment program is the Americans found a way to, it's going to close up. The pipe is closing, right? It's going to reach a point where it'll be dripping, right? But then with the refugee status, you notice that these are foreigners that are going to be coming to a country. They may claim citizenship, they may get a passport, and the US government may give in the region of about, say, $100,000 per person that is going to be taken into the country. I mean, these guys I always heard they say Trump is 5 steps ahead in the chess game. But the guy has found a way to replace our CBI program, Because if you're going to send refugees back into a country, give them some money, give the government some money, which is about $100,000, which is what they were selling the passports for. And you are forced to give them a passport now, they have to reside in your country. We don't know what the conditions are, he didn't say. That is a slap in the face of your CBI program. I mean, these guys, you don't play with the Americans like that. I mean, we saw that they went after Maduro after so long. Since 2020, that has been out and they have been studying. They go right after the head. Obviously, the parts of the body will come down, but they went all after the head. And the Americans are very, very, very meticulous in their operations. And if you see now that they are sending back these refugees and with some money attached to that, and eventually they may have to get a passport, we don't know what the deal is. That is our new CBI program. I mean, come on, there is not much to analyze any further, and I'm very happy the caller kind of brought that up and brought it into light a little bit. So that means people are seeing what is going on in the country, or people are waking up, and I'm happy that he made that call. Thank you for that.
Okay, excellent. And incidentally, Simeon, I believe it would probably be better to classify them as deportees, not refugees, huh?
Well,
Yes,
I've been
Simeon.
saying deported. Well, they have classified them as deportees. They have said
Right.
they are deportees.
Right.
And I think that's what makes it inhumane. That's what makes it unjust. That's what makes it criminally intentional. Dr. Andre is the legal person here. But if you have to look at it from a human rights perspective, if you have to look at it from the dignity of the human person perspective, and if you have to look at it from the legalities that pertain over, it's all those things. It's unjust, it's uncivil, it borders on illegality. You don't treat people that way. Not because you don't want somebody, you have to dump them onto another country. People are not made to be treated like that. We have in 2025, we're supposed to have overcome that level of treating other human beings as commodity that can be shuffled around. If you don't want them, you dump them somewhere. And that is why I've been saying since yesterday on my social that I am very much disappointed in the ecclesiastical authorities in Dominica, because if you say from a theory, and let me bring in that perspective.
Simeon,
if you say that you are the theological authority on the island,
can we take a quick call, Simeon?
Let's take a call.
Yeah, let's take a quick call. Lambi, let's take a call.
Yes, caller, go ahead.
Yes, gentlemen, good evening.
Good evening.
The man Boots in the air. I'm listening to the program, and I think our people need to be alerted and well educated as to what is taking place at this point in time. Because the way I look at it is this guy is talking about deportees. He's talking about refugees. But I look at it as deportees because I see it as persons holding CBI passports, holding Dominican or the Caribbean region passports, and they're in the United States because all they wanted to do is to get to the United States and to forget that they had to go back out. So they have overstayed. As a result of that, the break-off with Maduro and the leaders of the Caribbean throw back in their face the shit that they brought to the United States. Now, when they call them up to discuss it with them, I think that these guys was trembling in their boots, trembling in their pants, because they were in a position where the United States could have said that you guys going to face the court immediately. You will not go back. But out of that, they came up with a plan that they can maintain power. They can stay in power by taking these refugees, they call refugees, which is the deportees. Some will have Dominican passport already or Caribbean passport. Some will be given a passport for the time that they're here. Because since they send you to Dominica going to be your place, your destiny, the home that they send you to. What is going to happen? The electoral reform plan is that persons would have to reconfirm in order that they could vote. The government had seen already that if that program had taken place, or if that program taken place, this government is not going to fall back in power. So here comes the solution to the problem. When they pick up these guys, they will give them passports and they will give them the right to vote. So I am calling on the Dominican people, don't take that lightly. This is something the Dominican people have to stand up on, because those criminals that are there pirating, their plan is to remain in their position. And if they have to come out, or people have to come out, stand up, protest, and show the United States that the Dominican public is not a part of what is going on. This is my input, and that is what I would give from this discussion for tonight. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks a lot for your comments. Appreciate that. Yeah, take another call, Andy.
Yes, caller, please go ahead. No, we lost that one.
Lost a call. Simeon, let's go back to you. Sorry about the interruption. Let's take the call, Andy.
Yes, caller, please go ahead.
Yes, good evening, Lambert, and good evening, Mr. G, and good evening, Mr. What's your name?
Dr. Andre.
I'm forgetting my good name, my friend.
Dr.
Yes, not bad at all.
Okay.
You're speaking there. I started listening to the program, and my friend from the United States called me, and I just got to know that El Salvador, when they wanted to send back the El Salvador people, El Salvador got 10 million per person, and they sent back 100 and something people to El Salvador. The El Salvador government made sure they got money for that. So when Roosevelt carried saying he cannot tell us what he did, that's out tonight, guys. Out. I got it. I share it with you. All right, guys. Good night.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for that information. Yeah. One more call, Andy.
Yes, caller, please go ahead.
Yeah. Hello. Hello. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, my question to you. Yeah. I have 3 questions.
You need to turn off the radio in your background.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I rectify that.
Yeah.
Okay. What I'm asking, what would prevent America from having these people staying in America, and not by, why should they want to send them to other countries? Is it not going to be a burden for America just by keeping them? And this is one question. Even the government of Dominica would have received amount of millions to accept these people. How long this amount of money is going to be able to sustain these people in Dominica? And I can recall the Prime Minister said once during the Palestinians and the Israel war recently, and he said he was asking for them to make the people from the Palestine to come to Dominica because they are really highly educated people and trained people. But when I look at the Palestinian situation, I see these people as people who are more underprivileged than we Dominicans. So the type of information that we have obtained from the people in Gaza, like they are engineers, they are all that, these people, around 80% of these people are illiterate because they are on the state of siege since the creation of Israel. So he ought to be getting some information from some people, and he doesn't have his independence in terms of making his own research before he speaks. So I'm asking, I'd like any one of you to ask me the question, answer the question, why can't America keep these people in America? Dominica is unable to maintain its own self. That is why we had to be creating an industry they call the CBI. This is the only industry that the government was depending on to sustain the activities of our country. And if there was no CBI, the country would have been collapsed long time before, because these people doesn't know how to raise funds or to create things to make Dominica better. So what I'm asking is, why does America want to send these people to an underprivileged country like ours? Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks a lot for that question. I'm sure that Simeon can answer that question. But the only thing I'd like to say is that I don't think the people of Palestine are illiterate. I think they're quite bright people. Simeon, your thoughts on the questions, and then obviously on whatever else that you're planning to talk about. Are you with me, Simeon? Oh, Simeon, you're not hearing me. Simeon,
I don't know. It's a sort of, I'm not hearing you clearly. There's some buffering taking place. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, I'm hearing you clearly now. Yeah. Yes.
Can you hear me clearly? Because there's some buffering taking place. I'm not sure.
Yes. Yes, I'm hearing you clearly.
Okay. I'm sorry, I missed the question.
Oh, the caller.
So I missed the question.
No, the caller asked a question.
What's the question?
Well, the caller asked a question about why is it costing America a lot of money to have these people, and why send them to Dominica, because it's going to cost Dominica a lot of money to accommodate them. Yeah, I think you're
well, that's the question everybody's asking. Yeah, and that's the question everybody's asking. And I guess in time, as most other things with this government, we'll find out eventually, because we know that there's never complete public transparency. There's always some sinister motive or action behind whatever the government does. And we always find out long after everything the dust has been settled, that what we have been told is never what was in the first place. And things reveal themselves eventually. So I think as I said, and remember, that long winding statement by the Prime Minister really said nothing except two things. We are taking deportees because we have been banned from getting visa. So we work out something with America, but nobody knows what the solution is. And the question is, that is a very unfair trade-off, because it's saying that the rights and the privileges and the opportunities of Dominica can be exchanged for deportees. So we are reducing the dignity of the people of Dominica. We are telling the people of Dominica that in exchange for better opportunities, in exchange for a better life, in exchange for the opportunities to benefit from the whatever the United States bring, instead of that, we're giving you deportees and we don't know where they're coming from. We just don't know where they are coming from. Are they coming from Mexico? Are they coming from Colombia? Are they coming from the Middle East? Are they coming from Russia? Are they coming from Tajikistan? We don't know where they're coming from. What is their background? What skills are they going to bring to Dominica? How are they going to contribute to the economy and the general landscape of Dominica? What are they bringing into the country? Or are they going to be at the expense of government? Or is it that the laborites whose apartments have been empty in Portsmouth for the 5 years, that they are suddenly going to be compensated with the opportunity to have tenants? And where else are they going to go? Where else are they going to go? Or is it that the houses the apartments that were built out of CBI funds are going to be handed over to them? Or are we going to use one of the empty sheds in Portsmouth and turn it into a refugee camp or detention camp that can be sponsored? And is that what the exchange is for? And that is the questions we have to ask. But again, as I will return to what I was saying, I feel very aggrieved that people have to be treated as commodities. And that to me is my greatest disappointment from the churches in Dominica, the Dominica Christian Council, the Evangelical Association, the civic organizations, who are yet to make a statement on the fact that human beings are not to be treated as drafts on a board, or as dominoes to be shuffled on a table. They come to a country, you don't want them, so you're sending them somewhere else. That is not how you treat human beings. Human beings are not to be treated that way. And people with conscience, people with good thinking, people with a humanitarian mindset, people who want to think well of their brothers and their sisters and their neighbors cannot accept that. So, Mr. G, in your questions to us today, you were asking many questions, and I want to, because you see, there is a relation, between what we're discussing tonight in terms of arms and security and all of those kind of things there. Do you know, because I was thinking, do you know, Mr. G, that no mention was made of the Minister of National Security or the police force?
That's correct.
In any of this. Not the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, not the Ministry of Home Affairs, neither the Ministry of National Security. None of those three major governmental departments were even mentioned when it came to that. And so there are risks involved. There are risks involved. And so the question is, because you ask us 9 questions, and it's interesting you ask us those questions tonight, although there are many, they have one answer. So the first question, is there effective national security and accountability in Dominica? Accountability? No. Is crime and small arms proliferation now rampant in Dominica, considering there are 24 homicides in Dominica? Yes. Is there a problem with border security and police integrity in Dominica? Yes. Have societal norms and tolerance in Dominica been fostering crime and undermining social stability and national security? Yes. And I think that is at the heart of what we're discussing today. Because there's a very high level of tolerance, and the fostering of crime, and what is going to happen will undermine social stability. The next question asked is, do the government policies reduce guns proliferation? No. Has the government held anyone accountable for imported drugs? The answer is no, because we have people being arrested, and we don't know what happens to the cases after 5 years. Has enforcement of gun legislation in Dominica been successful? No. If not, why not? We know, because there are people who are complicit in high and low places who are very much involved in the proliferation of gun in Dominica, small arms. And so you ask me, what is the way forward? Is the government willing to take guns from their little snipers? I don't know, because we know what these people will tell you. And then the 9th question is gun violence being used to intimidate persons opposed to the legal regime? Definitely, I have been a victim of it. And there are many other people who have been a victim of it. Okay? And so the question I have to that has to be put before us tonight is all of those things. So all of those questions is yes and no. It's cut and dry. Cut and dry. And what we have in Dominica is, and allow me to say it, and I'm going to lead to that, is that we are, and let me focus on the theological perspective. What we are experiencing in Dominica is a very serious threat to life. And based on what is happening now, we can add to that, there's a threat to the dignity of human beings. So we are experiencing both a threat to life and a threat to the dignity of human beings, because all of those things you mentioned before undermines the integrity, the dignity, the worth, and the endowment of human beings as they are. And that's what we have to come to understand. So while we may contend that crime and violence are not experiences that we have just begun to encounter in Dominica, I would say that crime and violence of varying degrees have been experienced in Dominica, but we are seeing it more now. We are seeing it more now. And why I am saying that is the fact that if we have to look at the definition of crime and violence, it is based on the latter word. In other words, what I want to say is, I put both crime and violence and guns and all of those things together and use violence to define them. Because when we talk about small arms, when we talk about the violation of people's rights, when we talk about all those other things that you mentioned, the questions that you put to us, they are serious violations on human dignity. And so if you look at the root stem of the word violence, which is viol, it's rape, which is equal to a breakdown. And when you add this suffix to it, violate, you know, it possesses certain characteristics of meaning that there's break-in or ripping of what has been possessed. That's what we have. And so the crime and violence and all those things that you are talking about today, the small arms and the ineffective police force and all of those kind of things there, is almost reducing us to a certain sense of animal life in our society. Because, you know, in the realm of the jungle, there are no boundaries. There are no boundaries. Sometimes there's obscurity. And sometimes there is real danger. Because when you walk into the jungle, I mean, the wild animals, you do not know when are you going to get attacked. You do not know what's going to happen. And unfortunately, that is the situation we are in Dominica. We are in very unstable, we are existing in unstable times. We don't know if you will get a drive-by shooting. We don't know if you are enjoying somebody and somebody will kick you dead. We don't know if your mother, your sister, your nana, and your power, your girlfriend will get shot for simply being associated with you. Apart from the violence that we have been experiencing by this government for the past 23 years, because there has been violation of the economy of Dominica, there has been violation of the society of Dominica, there has been violation of the opposition, there's been violation of the constitution, there have been violation of the government system, there's violation of the police system, there's violation of the court system, there's violation of every strata of the Dominican society. So apart from the violence that we have been existing in, from a administrative and a governmental and a societal perspective, we are now faced with a violence, and because there is such violation of the structures and the system that are supposed to keep us safe, we are now encountering a milieu whereby we're not even safe. We're in the jungle, so to speak. And now in the midst of the jungle, we are being asked to accept deportees of where we don't know where they're coming from, making the whole jungle even more uncertain and tenacious and dangerous. Because we do not know at what cost. So we don't know if the elephants that are coming have been bought at penny halfpenny or whether they are being bought for $10 million. We don't know if they have the husks or whether they don't have any husks. We don't know how dangerous they are. So we don't know if they're coming to trample upon us or if they're coming to drown us. We do not know. And we are being told by the head of government at a press conference, we cannot disclose the details of the agreement. So Dominicans are left in the dark. And that is where I think there is even greater violation. There's greater violation because things are being imposed. It's like that's why I say it's a rape. It's a rape. So this country of Dominica has been raped. The majority of the people have been, and our integrity, our knowledge, our right for information is being ripped right before our very eyes. So we don't know. We just don't know. And then no. I just think, regrettably, we have a deafening silence. I don't know. I cannot be. So what the Prime Minister is saying, in essence, he's just going to send people to the palace, to Fenella when I'm in Portsmouth, and she's not going to have any say. He'll just send her to Lakia Joseph, to Pebush Lakia Joseph, and she will have no say because he made the decision. and you just send them to Mr. Pinard in Cottage, or you just send them to Darren, whatever, in St. Joseph, and you just send them to Miriam Blanchard in Goodwill. She has enough on her plate already. Or you just send them to Melissa Skerritt in Portsmouth, where they're in Roseau, where there are so many gangs, or send them to Shakira, where there's so many of them in Belfast State already. Who is he going to send them to? Who are they going to meet when they come? He's just sending them to them, and these people have no say. And I'm sure they're just going to nod their heads and clap like children in a kindergarten, you know. And they will just accept it, but they do not know the implications upon which they're going to have to deal with. When these people are going to be disseminated in the communities, you don't know who they're going to have contact with, huh? And you not even know to what extent you're going to be benefiting from them coming, whether they are carpenters or plumbers or electricians or farmers or whatever they are. How are they going to benefit your communities, or whether they're going to rob your already depleted communities of whatever resources they are. So that's a violation in a sense. That's a violation in a sense. And if America does not want them, why doesn't America want them? That's the question we have to ask. Of all the millions of people who have gone to America illegally, why don't they want them? And which ones of those millions are they going to send to Dominica? How are they going to sift them through and select them? And how are they going to determine which ones are qualified to be sent to Dominica? How are we going to know that? We don't know. And I think in the midst of all of that, when we and in all what we're talking about there, because Trump is the one who said, when he came down the golden escalator, that they are criminals. The people coming to the country are criminals. Those coming from the south border are criminals. All those who are entering the country illegally are criminals. By his own definition, it's the president of the United States who says he doesn't want immigrants because the immigrants coming into the United States are all criminals. We are not the ones saying they are criminals. And he does not want them because they are not serving the best interests of the United States. So we are saying, and we are telling this gentleman, send to us the people whom you don't want, whom you don't feel are being of interest to the United States, whom you have claimed to be criminals and illegals and feeding off your welfare system and your health system and your education system because they are robbing the United States of millions of dollars every year, and you're sending them to us? You're sending them to us? That's making us a real banana republic, because I remember the days of when we had our banana market days. You say Dwarf Cavendish will not be accepted. I don't know if you remember those things. That's how we selected the proper bananas in the different boxing plants. Go Michel, and they have to be 6 inches, 6 fingers, and so that's what we have come back to. Well, now we are banana republic because the United States has a tendency to call third world countries banana republics. Is that how they perceive us? Is that how they perceive us? And are you going to tell me that the head of our government, after that catastrophic and disastrous interview by our president of Dominica, violating her purpose and her function and her role and her responsibility, being very out of place when the protocol for the president says you're not supposed to grant interviews or speak on national policy matters? After that disaster, you are now coming up on the heels of that. And instead of trying to tame and tide the precipitous road which we're going, because let me tell you something, Mr. Gregor, Mr. George, Mr. Sanford, that if CBI fails, should CBI fail in Dominica, and as if it, I'm not sure if we have begun to fathom the implications of the economic disaster that is before us. Because I'm not sure if we understand really and truly that Dominica is sitting on the revenue of CBI. Where else is our money coming from? Where else? Not even our water that we can export. We're not even on agriculture. We're not on manufacturing goods. Not on small produced cottage industries. What are we exporting? We're exporting more people now per capita products in Dominica. And that is one of the things we have to do. So if this thing fails in Dominica, what is going to happen? There are many implications which we have to consider. And, I think we have to leave it to the more astute people like Mr. George and Mr. Sanford and Mr. Dr. Andre to get us out of this wilderness into some kind of promised land that I don't know how we're going to get there. But it's a sobering moment for us. And that is where I would like to say, this is not the time. This is not the time for any Dominican to be silent. This is not the time for anybody to be apathetic and say, I'm not in politics. This is not the time for anybody to say what happens on the global scene is not my business. This is not the time for anybody to say, okay, I love my PM or I don't love my PM. This is not the time when anybody should say, if not Scary too, or if not Labour Party. As a matter of fact, this is the time, I'm going to say it boldly, when every Dominican should demand that the Prime Minister should resign. It is time for him to go. He has expended any substance that he has left as being a head of government. He has no residue of integrity to lead any government or any country. It's time for him to go. We don't have to go into any violent thing, but he has to come to his conscience. He has to come to his sense. Some wise, intelligent, well-meaning, well-intended person should sit this gentleman down with a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, a good glass of coconut water on a bench or around a table and say, listen, partner, I think you have served your time. It's time for you to go. Somebody has to do that. Because clearly now by his utterances and his actions, it says, therefore, there's nothing more he has to give anymore. There's nothing more left. Nothing more left just by listening. And I think that is what we have to do, because in all the questions we are asking ourselves tonight, every day we're seeing something. For the past 3 months, I'm not sure if Dominicans have seen the downward spiral of where we are going. We have not been able to pick up rubbish in Dominica for a whole year. Rubbish. What do you call it? Zodi on the side of the road. We've not been able to pick that up for a whole year. Why you think that is so? Huh? Why has rubbish been able? And we're not even recognizing the connections to that, the branches to that. Long ago, when central government couldn't clean up villages, it was up to the local government to do it, the village council. Now, the village council have been so disempowered and been so taken over by the parliament that they don't even have the power and the capacity to clean their own villages. And that's a fact. So they have decimated everything that is there, and then we can't even pick up rubbish. We cannot solve crime. In a small country like Dominica, we cannot find out where drugs are coming from and where guns are coming from. We're not fooling anybody. People know where it's coming from, and all those kind of other things there. And then I guess next year there have been taxes upon taxes placed upon people, and people are just sit down there. And I think now it's time for wisdom, and now it's time for right judgment, and now it's time for prudence, and now it's time for magnanimity for the man to say, okay, fine. I think I have done my duty. I think I've tried my best. There are times I have succeeded and there are times I have failed. I can do no more. I'm an empty cup, and there's nothing more that can overflow from my cup. And there's nothing more going to run it over. And so therefore I can offer nothing more, and time for me to just retreat into some kind of obscurity, so that whatever dignity, whatever little memory and legacy I have left, people will remember it before the time comes when they are totally fed up with me and I have to run and go and leave my shoes and my suitcase behind.
Thanks a lot, Simeon, for that. Well, we're coming down to the end of the program, really. I mean, the time has run out on us. And Claudius, you can make some of your comments now and consider that to be your closing remarks.
For sure. I think Mr. Joseph, said it all and said it well. And when you think of the questions that was asked, his answers, his yes and no answers were just the same I had. But I had gone a little into explaining what national security means in the context of what is currently going on, and the whole idea of safeguarding our sovereignty. So we see that our sovereignty is for sale. Whether it is to safeguard the faults or the trespasses of the Prime Minister, it is for sale. It wasn't. These decisions were not taken to Parliament. They were not vetted and voted upon. And a one man take that decision. So the sovereignty of the country, where the people are the decisive factors, that is gone. So our sovereignty has been compromised. Our territorial integrity. Right now, we can bring deportees, refugees without knowing character, without knowing reputation, without knowing history. So that is an invasion of our territorial integrity, because there are laws and constitutional provisions that conduct business in our country. So if one man, without consultation of any arms of government, Ministry of National Security, Foreign Affairs, none of that is brought into the picture, and one man makes that decision to save his soul or save his skin, brings those people of unknown character into our country, our territorial integrity is compromised. Our citizens, our citizens are reduced to nothing. We don't have a say in those regards. So our citizens become second class, because we are now answering to foreign policies or foreign agencies, foreign countries that can play us like yo-yo. Right? And Simeon made the point about Trump and criminals, and so it shows also, and I think Simeon was a little emotional with the Trump aspect, but we need to look at it from an internal aspect. Our leadership had no strength. They were feeble and weak and could not stand up to the conditions that were put towards them in that negotiation. So when you look at it, there's a zero-sum game for us. We win nothing in the end. We compromise our sovereignty, our integrity. We belittle our citizenship by not involving them in such decisions, and then we do that. So citizens are now like next to nothing, and that is something that is concerning, very concerning. Our critical interest, and I wanted to go a little further into it. We talked earlier about our debauch is a bleeding scar in the center of our country, which is being eroded and ripped, to use the word that Simeon used, and violated by internal forces. Our government, our ministries of environment, and our planning division, who have the authority under the Constitution to make the right decisions as to whether we should go into debauch and mine for stones, they are no longer existing. They have failed as institutions of state. And that is another long discussion that we could have. And then you have foreign agents, the Chinese and the MMC construction, whatever, can come in and just pillage our environment without concern. So all these are national security areas that have been compromised. So our national security, the answer as it relates to that question is no. When you come to the other side and all this, we talk about the internal and external threats through the environment. I explained that through terrorism, through military stuff, through economic vulnerability. All this is being shown in Dominica. Or economic vulnerability is at its highest now with the uncertainty of the CBI program. Simeon say if, I would say when. I'll go even further to say when, because clearly you can see the patterns, and what is coming is when. It's not a matter of if anymore, it's when. And we need to now change gears and see how we can do to kind of cushion the impact that's going to have, right? National disasters, natural disasters, and all these things, right? And that encompasses policies, institutions, and action. Policies has failed. The government policies to rely heavily on CBI, that is a failed policy. Not to develop the key sectors, the key pillars of the economy, and that again is driven by greed and recklessness, as I said earlier. So that is a gonna fail. Institutions, the police force of Dominica is the most how I would say that is the worst of the worst when it comes to institutional failure. The recruitment of the police officers, the discrimination in promotion, the lack of integrity and values and principles that govern the police force is the catalyst of all the gun violence and all the other things you see that happen in Dominica. And I would really love some time to really dissect and analyze what I just made and prove my theory right. But the police force is the most broken of all institutions in Dominica, and they are the main vein line of the judiciary or the judicial aspect of the free arms of government. So that tells you what happens at the court system, and the lack of values and the lack of principle in choosing, for example, magistrates. When you have to deal with people that have the government in court to give them a magistracy over they winning their case against the government in court, when these are the conditions that choose whether you have a magistrate or you have a young lawyer who happen to be some relatives of some politicians to become magistrates to judge, serious cases in the country. These institutions are failed, they're broken. And that answers the other questions as it relates to gun violence. Who is going to hold up the gunslinger? They cannot, because everybody know everybody business and everybody's compromising the system. So that in itself, and the actions. Look at the actions of our governments. The actions of our governments. The people do not choose who should be their power rep anymore. It's the prime minister that picks and chooses who runs in that place, so he can tell them what he has. So all these levels of institutional failure is now showing its true self. Not being able to collect rubbish, not being able to find the perpetrators of crime, because everybody has a contact within the government and we cannot compromise. The recruitment of police has to be based on who wear my party colors, whose parents are supportive and patriotic to my political party, and so on. So that is a disaster of a state to be, and everything now is coming to roost. All the eggs are now coming to hatch, and we are inheriting a whole tonload of those bad policy decisions, bad action, bad institutional human capitalization, and all these things are what is showing now. And again, my call in closing is to come back to the people. We have to return to our traditional principles and values, and our people have to stand up and stop being quiet. Mr. Joseph talked about the churches. We're calling upon the churches. The churches cannot continue to pray in silence and hide behind the walls of the churches and pray in silence. They have a role to ensure that the conscience of the state is reignited. The conscience of the state, the fire in the conscience of the people are ignited, and the church has a responsibility. So in closing, I call on the church tonight to play a role. Play a role in the state and ensure that the people consciousness are awakened, the core principles are revisited, and that truth will come to bear, that we can have a prosperous nation. Thank you very much, Mr. G, for the opportunity. It was a pleasure to be part of this panel. Mr. Joseph, Mr. George, and Mr. Andre, thank you for your company tonight.
Yes, and thanks a lot, Claudius. But I thought that your final remark would be that it's time for a change of government.
Well, most definitely, because once the people conscience are raised and they get out of that mafiaism start of government we have for the last 20 years, there will definitely be a change of government. And otherwise, we sink into the abyss.
Thanks a lot, Nicholas. George, your final comments. You're muted. Right.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. I think I'll steer around something, what I've heard throughout this thing, the theme here is the lack of values, accountability, and so forgive me if I seem repetitive in what I am saying, but the irony of the lack of values issue is that the political system that we work with has been ingrained in us so much that essentially people say that once you are a politician, you are dishonest, you cannot be trusted, you're unaccountable, and so on. They know that. So if your child grows under your tutelage, your leadership, your nurturing, the child goes to university, graduates, comes back, and is performing in the public or private sector, and then suddenly decides to transit to the political arena, automatically they become corrupt. Automatically. That's what faces us. And the irony is, we as the society have failed to set standards of accountability for our prime ministers and parliamentary representatives, that they become accountable. So we elect corruption. We elect lack of values. We are the ones who elect, and then we expect them to change. We must put the standards in place that facilitates that a prime minister, you heard Mr. Sanford talking about the election or the selection of police officers. I don't want to go too far in that. I know that I was not selected because the party rep sent me. I didn't know the party rep at the time. Okay, and I know I performed creditably along other officers who performed creditably. But that's what we're hearing now. We need to change it. And finally, we've been bandying two words: deportee and refugee. The deportee is one whom...
Simeon, could you mute your mic? Yes, go ahead, Nicholas.
Yeah, the deportee is one whom
a
country sends out of their land. That's what the deportee is. So for some reason, criminality or otherwise, they don't want that person in their country, they send them out. A refugee is somebody who is avoiding persecution, or intimidation. They're running for their lives. That's what they're doing. In either case, why is our prime minister accepting refugees? Why we're not accepting them directly? It would have been better if the prime minister had accepted Palestinians from Gaza when the war was on there. There would be a moral argument for it, that these people would be in Ukraine, for instance. These people are being persecuted and they've been bombed mercilessly, and 10 Ukrainians want to come to Dominica as refugees. That would be better. But for the United States to select who our refugees are going to be and who our deportees are going to be, it's just reckless for us to accept it. And yes, I agree with Honorable Sanford. And tonight, I got frightened when I heard Mr. Simeon Joseph say, if CBI fails. So once it sunk in, and I sat there and what, boy? And then Honorable Sanford said, when it fails. I want to end by saying, Mr. Sanford, that somebody said these El Salvadorans got 10 million per person who were relocated in El Salvador. And then you said that is our new CBI. There's a difference. There's a difference. If the 10 million is coming to the Treasury to ignite our economy, to grow our economy, fine. But the CBI, those persons who paid the 200,000 for the passport had a residual 10 or more million that they could invest in the country. If we get 10 million per refugee in Dominica, what guarantee we have it is going to be invested in the economy of Dominica for the betterment of Dominica? And that is more frightening and much more the reason why we have not heard enough from the Prime Minister. We have not heard enough from the United States. And we should be wary of accepting deportees or refugees from the United States into Dominica. Thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Nicholas. George, Simeon, your closing remarks?
My closing remarks is one that's going to be very general. I think I'll take it from a psychological perspective. Because in listening to this entire conversation tonight, I'm thinking of the whole ambit of everything in relation to life and behavior and aggression, as a word that comes to mind. Sigmund Freud spoke about the passion for destroying as opposite to the passion of loving in one of his statements. And he speaks about aggressive behavior by human beings manifested in various forms, particularly with being in an innate instinct to discharge inappropriate actions which manifest themselves, put it that way. So we can say from that perspective that what we're going through, as I said, it is a form of violence. There's no doubt about it. We talk about arms, we talk about guns, we talk about insecurity. And I alluded to the fact earlier that it's a violation. It's kind of a rape of because when you are raped, you see you're exposed, imposed upon. And that's how basically I feel about Dominica now. Many things have been imposed upon us without our consent, without due regard of respect for our dignity. And that's why I put it that way. And once again, we are seeing it. Dominicans are being again asked to accept something that they have no right to say whether they want it or not. And that is psychotic in a sense. And it's a revelation of the personality and the nature of who is inflicting that violence. Because you see, apart from Sigmund Freud, just in closing, allow me to say there's also Erich Fromm, who's another psychologist who explains that aggression in two ways: the benign aggression and the defensive aggression. One that leads to survival and one that leads to pleasure. Bear with me. And so that's the dichotomy that we have been based on, that we live on. To survive or to pleasure. And when you really look at it, that's always what the play between us, you know. The thrust to force people in survival mode across the board. You cannot live without me. You will not get a house without me. You will not get a job without me. You will not exist without me. Okay, and you have to know that you exist only because I am. And so that's where many Dominicans have been cornered into that survival mode. And basically, that's what Dominicans are doing, you know. We have become so mendicant and begging and with the mentality that we are not empowered to do things on our own. And then the pleasure. So we are given Creole festivals. The parliamentary representatives are turning the village feasts into rum and siwo and botin. And everything is a good time, ham and turkey and feeling good, you know. And then I see in February again, we have something called a gospel festival. That is another thing. I don't understand. How does a government get involved in a gospel festival? Who's footing the bill? Who's going to pay for that stage and that light and that sound? And who's going to pay for these artists to come down? Where does the government have to do in having a gospel festival? And it's free. So Dominicans are not even going to pay for that. Where is the money going to come from? Is it another CBI fund? The thing is that where the money for the deportees going to go into? Because the artists that I saw, they're not cheap. It's not Jerry Lloyd and local. They are all and all is international artists. So again, it's the other end of pleasure. So we see that in spite of the fact that people are going through this violation, we're not going to pacify them by giving them religious music and let them shout and praise glory, hallelujah. And we're going to pacify them so that when we give them this gospel concert, they will forget all the other troubles that they have and they'll say, praise God, while Dominica is going to the dock. So you see this kind of psychological warfare that is being imposed upon us. And that is why I think Dominicans have to understand whether they want to continue to exist under this extreme aggression without justification, or are they going to be people who will take a deliberate commitment to restore and regain their human dignity as a people? I think I'll end there.
Yes, and thanks a lot for that, Simeon. Dr. Andre, you have the final word.
Yeah, well, let me again thank you for inviting us to partake of this meal of enlightenment and education and edification and all the above. Let me thank those who've listened diligently for doing so, despite having myriad other things to do. Ambient show, and let me thank you for your sterling efforts and your sterling contribution to the cause of liberation in Dominica. But when we reflect from a historical perspective on Dominica, I mean, think of the songs which defined nationhood. I mean, once upon a time, we sang songs which says something to the effect that all for each and each for all. Once upon a time, we sang a song which says, "Pa kite yo pon Dominic Hod nou." Once upon a time, we sang a song which says something to the effect, "No ni bell this and no ni bell that." And once upon a time, we sang a song, a folk song, which gloried the kind of togetherness of people exemplified in the line, "Do, do, do, gade, samwe many bow." But what is being brought to Dominica, quite frankly, is a devil in a sack. At every turn, the whole question of fraudulent elections, the whole question of non-bidding opportunities where Dominican artisans, construction workers, truckers are excluded from being able to contribute to the economy. What we are being given, for example, as an insult, in my respectful view, despite the fact that Dominicans on the ground are not even being paid a living wage, we have offers for persons to be brought into Dominica to assist, note the word please, to assist the United States, for God's sakes, at a time when, quite frankly, our leaders are under the gun because of fraudulent schemes, which diverts money from the treasury, which are being used to fatten pockets, and which are being hidden in certain jurisdictions such as Dubai and other jurisdictions in Europe. Dominicans have been buffeted by this hardship, and there has to be a time when Dominica should say, and in my view, the time has come, enough is enough. One hardship cannot follow relentlessly on another hardship, for God's sakes. There's something has to give. Democracy cannot withstand that kind of pressure. The people have to take control of their lives and their livelihood and their integrity and their decency and their hope in the future. And quite frank, those who have hope, all power to you. But quite frankly, that hope has been buffeted by every type of storm, every type of economic storm. And I say, quite frankly, that it's probably miraculous that you still have people in Dominica, Mr. G, who are braving those storms with great courage, who are not going to hide their boats, but still go out, or still call the newspaper, the radio station every day. Persons who, quite frankly, don't have huge savings. Persons who don't know persons who can alleviate their own hardships. Persons who only can rely on their internal and their moral strength. And I hope that strength continues to innovate and inspire other Dominicans to say enough is enough. To say that, quite frankly, if they're not prepared to protect their way of life, their dignity, then what will they stand up to protect? That's the question. But again, it seems to me, as long as we're alive, as long as we can speak, we can talk, we can hear, we can feel, there is hope. And I certainly continue to be hopeful because in my respectful view, it cannot continue in that way. There is only so much suffering persons can endure and so much hardship. And bear in mind the lesson, if the reports are true of Venezuela, when those senior security persons saw the lives being lived by those in authority, the luxury, the wealth, the disregard for the people of Venezuela, over 60 or 70% live in poverty. They said, no, I cannot be loyal to such a regime when I cannot even get medical attention for my daughter. And I hope that we have reached a stage where we can say, no, the collective good should take precedence over individual signs of greed and living in luxury. So I say good night to the Dominicans. I wish you well. I hope you protect yourselves. I hope you take care of your health, because that is one of the biggest casualties of this type of callous administration that we have in Dominica. I'm an expert on Fensic because that's what I grew up on. Unfortunately, many people cannot even get a Fensic when they go to the So you can keep Dominica friendship at true, whatever it is. So I ask people to reflect on their lives and act in the interest of the person you see in the mirror. And it's not Michael Jackson, it's you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and thanks a lot, Dr. Andre. I mean, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Good night, Mr. Andre.
Good night. Good night.
And Nicholas and Lambi and Sherwin. Really and truly, I mean, we can just encapsulate all of what is said tonight. It's forwards. Enough is enough. Time for a change. And so with that, I'd like to say good night to all the folks who are with us on Facebook and on YouTube. And good night, gentlemen, for your substantive contribution.
Thank you, Mr. Sanford, Mr. Joseph.
All right. Take care.
Dr. George, Mr. G.
All
Lambi.
right. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.
The Global View on Q, the big station. Insights into where the people of Dominica and the Caribbean came from. Understanding our past. Embracing our present. Charting the way forward into our future. Together, eliminating poverty. Embracing justice, peace, and togetherness. The Global View on Q. Networking Dominica with